Sir Winston Churchill, the cigar-loving Prime Minister of Great Britain, famously said that rugby is a game of hooligans played by gentlemen.
Sure.
The question is this really true? By the way, the Rugby World Cup will be happening this year in September in Japan, and I hope by the end of my speech, you'll be looking forward to watching some of it. But first, a quick lesson on what rugby is all about. It is a team game that has 15 players on each side, played on a field which is roughly the same size as a football pitch. The only difference with the pitches is the goalposts. They look exactly like the football ones, but the uprights extend possibly 10 meters into the sky. Each half is 40 minutes, so an 80-minute game, and they use a very odd-shaped ball. Easy to hold, but very difficult to kick. That, in summary, is what rugby is all about. Now, the 15 people are made up of 8 forwards, 1 scrum half, and 6 running backs. Let me tell you about them in a short while. If you watch a typical rugby game, you will find groups of men huddling together, looking like an uncontrolled mob of people. In fact, if it's the first time you watch a game, you would think this is a fight going on and somebody's life is about to end. But actually, that is not so. A scrum is all about getting the ball. The effort of the game is to get the ball and keep the ball. And the forwards have this duty. They're usually big, burly men, very strong, and who, when they get hold of that ball, will hang on to it for dear life. They are persistent, they're hardworking, and they're very, very strong. Now that scrum might look like it's a mess, but actually there's some very strict rules that govern the way a scrum is run. For example, a player cannot go to the other side of the scrum. They must stay on their own side. And therefore there has to be discipline in the way they operate, they behave in the scrum. The second thing is that they cannot kick, punch, bite, or slap anybody in the scrum. The only thing they can do is push and try and get the ball. Should the ball be on the ground for any reason whatsoever, the only way you can move the ball towards your side is by heeling it back. So as you can see, it's got a very disciplined way of dealing. There is actually method to the madness. Now, let me take you back to gentlemen, especially for you ladies. Don't you expect your men to be organized, to follow rules, and to have some method to the madness of their lives? I am sure you agree with me. The second person in that team is a scrum half. Now, contrary to expectations, he is not a huge person, and many of the best scrum halves in the world are actually small, very nifty, very swift men. And what is their role? When these big men are scrambling for the ball and trying to get it to their side, he is the only person allowed to go in there and retrieve the ball. When he retrieves the ball, he then decides what he must do with it. Will he kick it forward? Will he pass it to the running backs? Or will he keep a hold of it and expect the forwards to protect it? He is a decision maker, and he can change the course of the game by the decision that he makes. The other thing which is very obvious about his role is that he is a great communicator. When the ball comes out of the scrum, he is the first one to shout, "The ball is out," so that they can come out of the scrum and continue to protect the ball. If he does not want them to come out, he'll say, "The ball is still in," especially if he can see that the scrum is pushing forward. He is the biggest communicator, and he has to be clear in his communication. Again, I ask, Wouldn't it not be wonderful if all men were fantastic communicators? If what they said is exactly what you wanted to hear? Men, and gentlemen in this case, are expected as well to be able to give clear decision on where things should go. They should be leaders of change. The third group of people in a scrum are the running backs. And they're very interestingly arranged. We have a fullback, we have 2 wings, and 3 running backs. Their work is when they get the ball, is to try and run as fast as possible and score by touching the ball down. They must evade the efforts of the other team to stop them, and in many cases must be brave because the only way he can be stopped is by being tackled to the ground. If you've ever fallen when running at speed, you know how hard that can be, isn't it? And therefore, for you to decide that you're going to run against a possible tackler, you have to be a courageous and strong person. So these are very swift people, very strong as well, courageous people who have to be able to see opportunity of where they can run to make a try. We expect our gentlemen to be courageous, to see opportunity and take advantage of it, and to be strong enough to take the hits that life deal with them. Therefore, I would like to modify Sir Winston Churchill's saying a little bit, and maybe make it my own. That rugby is a game that changes hooligans and makes them into gentlemen. I am sure all of you here, especially the ladies, will begin to encourage their men to take on rugby. A saying by a famous Hollywood fellow, Vin Diesel, and I'm sure those of you who watch movies are familiar with him, says that being a gentleman is a matter of choice. It does not come easily. But I'll conclude with this anonymous saying that I found on the internet, and therefore you can go and claim that it is by me. And this is what it says: character, intelligence, strength, style. That is what makes a gentleman. Madam Toastmaster.